Because I have proved to everybody in the world that I am the best on this microphone, in that ring, even at commentary. Nobody can touch me.
Hey there, wrestling fans, it is I, CM Jew, the most glorious Jew that ever lived in your wrestling rabbi. And as always, I ask you to bask in my tranquilo there, bro. And we are not yet back to reviewing because, well, Black Wednesday happened. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, possibly hello future people, Black Wednesday, which happened almost a week ago at this point, was when a bunch of wrestlers and personnel were released by the WWE due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Among other cuts to the business, which included stalling for 6 months on the building of their new building in Stamford, executives having their pay cut, and other cuts to other parts of the WWE corporate business structure. This, of course, has caused a lot of damnation towards the WWE for releasing both wrestlers and/furloughing producers and other employees that work behind the scenes till I think the date is July 1st. Is when they're going to furlough them to, but it could be possibly longer. But people have basically been condemning the WWE and Vince McMahon for doing this during the pandemic. And I'm here to actually argue why, at the very least, you should just blame Vince McMahon and the WWE for Black Wednesday. First off, let's say this. Part of the reason I want to do this video is there's another video that I'm going to be releasing along with this that was very personal that I did, 45 minutes long, and this really goes to one of the points I was making in this video about what I call the myth of Devil McMahon. You know, that the idea that Vince McMahon is this devil who has this unbinding control of the WWE, who wakes up in the morning thinking, you know what, pal? How am I gonna, screw the fans out of their money while pissing them off at the same time? That's what I need today. He wakes up every day thinking that, and that's just not true. He's not a saint, but he's no devil. He is a human being, and more importantly, he is a businessman who's a bit of a workaholic, which is put in lightly, and it really is just focused on how to make his business profitable. Whether you necessarily agree with how he goes about and does it, whole different story. But that's who he is. And he's got to make business decisions that you, me, and a lot of other people have no clue about, because we will never be in the type of position to where we have to make decisions that affect hundreds of thousands of people like Vince does, considering how many people WWE employs all around the world. So, first off, one of the things that frustrated me with all the sort of criticism that they got was I think not enough people were focused on, in particular the wrestlers who were let go, because it's always sad about the wrestlers who were let go. And rather than, I think, being mad at Vince and WWE, I think people could have spent their time better, posting clips of the wrestlers and getting excited about the opportunities they can have and going to their store and buying their merchandise rather than just, posting they have a new shirt, go buy their merchandise rather than buying their merchandise. If you're somebody who doesn't have a lot of money, that's reasonable and understandable, but there are people who spend way too much money on wrestling paraphernalia who didn't go out and buy those shirts. To which, by the way, you should definitely go to Pro Wrestling Tees and buy the shirts of the likes of Rockstar Spud and Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, the Good Brothers, Zack Ryder, Kurt Hawkins, all of them. You should go and buy their stuff. So I don't think enough focus was put on them. And it's heartbreaking. But there are two parts also that I think people are missing with that. One is that one of the constant criticisms of WWE is that their roster has been bloated, which is an absolutely fair criticism. And the fact is, not just because it's WrestleMania season, usually there's expected cuts after WrestleMania, but more importantly, because there wasn't really one last year, and I can't remember if there was even one the year before that, maybe a very small one. You know, this wasn't just something expected because of WrestleMania season, but this is expected for years at this point, that there would be this massive cut of wrestlers. And sadly, it unfortunately had to come, at least the hand was forced to do this, because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's always hard to see these wrestlers leave because a lot of them are good and you wish they would have better opportunities in WWE. But the other thing is, they're not just, throwing them on the street. These wrestlers are going to be paid through July, and hopefully our country, not with our president in charge likely, but still our country, will have found a way to where other wrestling promotions can put on wrestling, whether it be in empty arenas or whatnot, by July. And therefore we'll have other places and opportunities to go, including Japan. But then again, Prime Minister Abe is a dickweed, but that's a whole different story. I don't want to get into Japanese politics. It's hard enough to get into American politics. But again, it sucks that they didn't have better opportunities in WWE, and it's open to have that debate, but to act like Vince and WWE did all of that on purpose because they hated these wrestlers because they saw them as wrestlers of the fans. Again, it's a business and stuff happens. Like, for instance, Epico and Primo. How long have we been expecting Epico and Primo to be released by the company? Years at this point. And that's not to make light of the fact that they lost it during a pandemic and the anxiety that not having a job or health insurance can be during a pandemic. In fact, if you want to look at the effects of anxiety can have during this pandemic on somebody involved in the wrestling industry, Kurt Hawkins' wife did an absolutely amazing post talking about this and why it's frustrating. But sitting there and lobbing insults at the WWE and Vince McMahon is not going to make this better because WWE's hand was forced beyond this point. And this is something that I don't think people have talked about. For example, when WWE was being labeled an essential business, everybody was focused on, that the Trump rally pack that's headed by Linda McMahon had recently made a big donation to Florida. What wasn't reported, or at least wasn't reminded of people, is that donation was actually announced months ago at this point, before the pandemic even became a thing. I remember reading their plans to do a donation in March, and I believe it was early January when this was announced. It was around the time the whole impeachment trial was going, and it was something that was buried among that news. So the fact that they were going to spend money in Florida, the fact that this super PAC for Trump was going to be spending money in Florida and that it was going to start in March/April actually wasn't news. It had been previously announced, just not many people knew about it. Equally frustrating was the fact that while everybody was focused on that, there was also a news item about NBC and Fox's contract language involved WWE that was forcing McMahon to have the idea that he needed to do live shows. And there was no reporting on it other than the rumors. No one called NBC or Fox to confirm the language or to talk to them about it. Everybody wanted to focus on the juicy, evil Vince McMahon story and evil Linda McMahon, buying their way as an essential business story, But no one wanted to focus on Fox and NBC potentially screwing WWE out of hundreds of millions of dollars with basically a backdoor out clause because of the concept of needing live television. Now, as has been recently reported, NBC and Fox has now told Vince that no, they don't need to do live shows, so that he can now do pre-tape shows, which is better for their virus preparation. But again, the fact that the language is such that Vince had to be scared. And you have to understand why Vince McMahon is scared as a businessman. He's seen what happens when outside interests screw wrestling companies. Look at how the pay-per-view services screwed ECW in the late 90s. And that goes to what Vince's fear is. Vince McMahon has taken major hits over the past month and a half due to this virus. To the shutdown and ultimately bankruptcy of the XFL, to the loss of hundreds of millions of dollars in live event revenue. I mean, WrestleMania, while seen by plenty of people, the revenue that event could have generated in the Raymond James Stadium, that's millions, hundreds of millions of dollars lost. And again, yes, it is affecting the profit margins that have been forecasted for WWE, which is another issue. A lot of these cuts that you've seen, because they're also cutting their executive pay and holding back on building anything more on their new building, and among other things, it is all about this so-called forecast profit margin for stockholders. And this is another issue. Stockholders don't care because no one focuses on them. No one guilts them into doing the right thing. All they care about is getting what's been promised to them. And if they don't, they sell. And you have to think about what would happen if a lot of people sold their stock in WWE, in particular to a singular individual who was looking to take over WWE. Maybe somebody who didn't really like wrestling, or only liked it a certain way as it was back in the 80s, only for kids. Vince has seen what happens when a controlling interest in a company screws a wrestling company. Just look at what happened when AOL took over Time Warner. AOL's actions during that time period did more to destroy and put WCW out of business than anything Vince Russo or any of the bad decisions that WCW made over the course of those 2 years. And Vince, a study of history, knows that. He is very keen on wanting to try to keep WWE in his and his family's control. That's why he cares about making the stockholders happy, which is an unfortunate thing they have to worry about. So in closing, Black Friday was a horrible thing and it sucks. But there's a couple of things to remember. The wrestlers who release, I guarantee you a lot of them will find someplace else to sign and wrestle. And hopefully by July, after their 3 months is up, they'll be able to go out and wrestle again for companies maybe like Ring of Honor, Impact, or even New Japan. And for the furloughed employees, and for that matter, maybe some of the released employees, they could possibly still be brought back. It's not like they're released and they can never go back to work for WWE. In particular with the furloughed employees, WWE has plans on wanting to bring most of them back. More importantly, in closing, I want to say this. I'm not sitting there and saying, don't think that it sucks and don't hate the fact that Vince and the WWE board who made these decisions. You can think that it sucks and hate it what you want. All I'm asking you to do is that if you're going to hate them, also hate the governor of Florida, DeSantis, the mayor of Tampa as well, who put WWE in this mess by one, not closing down the state, and as far as the mayor of Tampa and the city of Tampa is concerned, not immediately negotiating pushing back the events and screwing over not just WWE, but all the little smaller wrestling companies by not issuing a stay-at-home order and forcing the hands of that these wrestling companies could collect on insurance, rather protecting their insurance money over these companies' insurance money. And that includes the smaller wrestling promotions. Hate also on NBC and Fox, who have the power to be able to talk with Vince and say, this is a serious thing, don't worry about money, we will pay the contracts out, we care about the safety of your workers, so you can shut production down and don't have to worry, you can do clip shows and stuff, because they have the power to do that, but you don't hear NBC and Fox trying to negotiate with WWE to do that, now would you? Which would put Vince at ease. Blame that Cheeto orange tanned orangutan bastard child named President Trump for not just being the worst president, but the worst human being on God's green earth with no sympathy, who has put WWE in this situation because of the long list of things that he did wrong with this pandemic. Closing the part of the government that could have focused on disease preparation stuff because Obama created it and his slight against Obama. Not doing testing fast enough when he should have started creating the tests or ordering the creation of the tests in December. Not listening to experts. Waiting to the last moment, and more importantly, not issuing a nationwide stay-at-home order, among other things. I mean, we could be here for the next 45 minutes to talk about everything he's done wrong. But, so, blame him as well, because what his choices have forced WWE's hand in this as well. Last but not least, blame the stockholders, who, as I mentioned, only care about getting their pay. The stockholders could easily call a meeting and say, it is okay if we don't get as much money as projected. We are okay. We understand that it is an extreme, sort of wartime-like situation and expect the type of profits that we were promised is unreasonable. The stockholders could call a meeting and do that. But they haven't. So blame the stockholders who control WWE, the ones who don't have a vested interest in keeping the company successful, like Vince McMahon and Triple H and others that are part of the family that own stock. I'm talking about people outside the family who own stock, like the said aforementioned Oklahoma Fire Department pension fund. Again, the people who control those assets and the individuals who control stock can call a meeting tomorrow and say, it's all right if we don't meet our profit margins. But they haven't, because all they care about is getting their money. So yes, be mad at Vince McMahon and WWE, but also be equally, if not more mad at all those individuals and interests who forced WWE's hand and force them to have to do such draconian cuts to their business, which included laying off and furloughing wrestlers and employees during this horrible pandemic. Well, that's it, and hopefully the next time you see me, I will be reviewing the WrestleMania that was too big for one night, WrestleMania 36. So until next time, wrestling fans, just remember I am your wrestling rabbi and the most glorious Jew that ever lived. So just sit back and bask in my tranquilo, bro.